Here you will see for yourself. What is the victim's market? Which they use to false international statistics. In Argentina, a national prosecutor's office, specialized on trafficking in persons, called Protex, began to operate in 2013. This office is run by
María Alejandra Mangano
and
Marcelo Colombo.
Taking advantage of the huge difference between the Argentine trafficking law and the international trafficking one established by the United Nations, Protex is passing off a multitude of people as human trafficking victims, which according to the international law, they are not. Protex is reporting false international statistics, obtaining more budget and power, destroying lives along the way, and creating for themselves the victim's market.
Zaida Gatti,
who up until a few months ago was the head of the National Trafficking Victims Rescue Program, confirms it.
Out of the more than 7,000 victims we have assisted, only 2% recognize themselves as victims.
In other words, 98% of the people marked down by Protex as trafficking victims do not perceive themselves as such and state that they are not. Mostly women. As a matter of fact, it is the very U.S. State Department who, in its annual reports on human trafficking, alerts the world about the difference regarding the Argentine law.
Inconsistent with international standards, Law 26842 establishes the use of force, fraud, and coercion as aggravating factors, rather than essential elements, of the crime.
In other words, under Argentine law, any person who benefits from the free labor of another can be accused of trafficking, even if they work without fraud or coercion, even if they do it gladly. Protex, if it wanted to, could mark down Red Cross volunteers as victims of human trafficking, for example. Yes, you heard it right. So, the Department of State got to ask Argentina.
Amend the human trafficking law to make force, fraud, or coercion essential elements of the crime, rather than aggravating factors, consistent with the United Nations TIP protocol.
Meanwhile, Protex not only continues falsing international statistics, but goes even further. The United Nations defines as vulnerable people who have special difficulties in exercising their rights. Protex expanded this concept to be able to call vulnerable any person who denies being a victim and thus discard their testimony. So, in 2021, Protex marks down 7 women as human trafficking victims. All of them adults, and all of them students of a yoga school. To this end, Protex summons the media, and on the night of August 12, 2022, in front of the TV cameras, they raid the yoga school in order to rescue all of the alleged human trafficking victims, imprisoning 19 alleged traffickers. But this time, Protex got exposed, as no victim was found in the proceedings. Here is the report made by the National Trafficking Victims Rescue Program, which confirms it.
It is noted that none of the persons interviewed remained under the protection of the rescue program.
After this incident, and for the very first time, the international community puts false international's Protex statistics in its eye. The United States, in its report on Argentina and human trafficking of the year 2023, goes as far as to say,
it was unknown how many of the cases prosecuted under Law 26842 involved trafficking offenses, as defined by international law.
But although no trafficking victim was found in the raids, Protex insists that these women are victims, stating that they were vulnerable and unaware of being sexually exploited by the yoga school. Here we show you.
They remain deceived. They are not aware that their group manipulates them. Rather, they consider the opposite, that they belong to a group in which they have been given an opportunity for the development of their goals, or personal, or spiritual growth.
Yes, Protex is setting the stage to consider any personal development or spiritual group as suspect, thus being able to throw its members into their victims' market. But these women raised their voices, demanding Protex not to violate their rights. At this point, it is the Second Chamber's Federal Court of Appeals who intervenes, ordering the release of the incarcerated people and ordering extensive forensic psychological reports on the alleged victims to determine whether their will was indeed conditioned, as Protex claims. 10 months later, after the work of 15 experts from the Forensic Medical Corps, the expert reports finally come out. All of them account for the same things. They are all women between 35 and 66 years of age, with no sign of submission, no will alteration, nor reduction of competent thinking. Quite the opposite.
Vulnerability indicators are not identified. Adapted and self-confident person. The volitional sphere presents itself without disturbances. Its evidenced awareness of reality. Lucid, oriented in time and space. Perceives, thinks and discriminates adequately and normally. Vulnerability indicators are not identified or objectified. State and situation awareness. Good level of self-esteem.
But unbelievably, Protex does not let go. After these conclusive expert results proving Protex wrong, rejecting the evaluations of 15 renowned specialists, experts on this field, disregarding the decision made by the Federal Court of Appeals, and with astounding impunity, Protex requests to carry on with the trial, even with no victim. To carry on with the trial implies stripping these adult and capable women of the basic freedom to choose their own life project. Anything goes, as long as their statistics are not touched, nor their victims' market. So, not knowing what else to do, these women, marked down by Protex as victims, joined together and filed a legal complaint against Mangano and Colombo for abusing authority and breaching public officials' duties. This was unprecedented. No one had ever dared to formally accuse Protex. And of course, these women are currently being harassed with legal and media campaigns. We give notice that Protex, in its voracity to increase its statistics, being able to disregard the very basic rights of any person marked down as victim, has created its own moral standard, violating Argentine constitutional rights such as the Article 19, the right to self-determination, and a number of international treaties and agreements. We call upon the national and international community as a whole to stop the systematic abuse of constitutional rights by Protex, because today it is them, but tomorrow it could be you or me.